Hello and welcome to today's live. I do feel like I've kind of cheated a little bit, because I didn't actually go live yesterday. And there is a very good reason for that. It was my dad's 14th anniversary of his passing. 14 years. So it was a bit of a delicate day, and I decided to, I'm doing this 365 life challenge, but likewise I do need to honor myself. It wasn't an easy decision because I almost felt like I'm not staying true to my word and almost like failing the challenge. But then I also had to concede, I guess, and just realize that I may not be going live. I'm still doing these lives for 365 days. And this day where it's a really delicate, let's say, it's where I just yesterday I just went into my little cocoon, did a little ritual for my dad, just to honor him, honor us, honor the family, the lineage. And then I just did some work, which sounds very counterintuitive, but when I say work, I just I did a lot of journaling, a lot of foundation work, so I wasn't actually on the computer or doing anything in that sense. So it was very much a day spent in ritual yesterday, and I wasn't in the state of really coming online, and I didn't feel like I didn't show up on Instagram or any other ways really. And that's the thing with grief, right? So when we're grieving, it's not you're just grieving for this long and then you never grieve again, i.e. after he passed away. Obviously I went into a state of grief and all of the different stages and everything I did, but it's still even 14 years later now, it's still ongoing at times, just because he was loved. I loved him, obviously. I guess it's not necessarily obvious, but I loved him. I miss him. And when I got married, when I had my child, all of these things, all of loads of different life events, well, I wished he would still be here. But and it's in those moments, I think, when it just when it really hits you. Well, at least it hits me. And then obviously on his actual anniversary, which was yesterday, which doesn't really help because it's my birthday in 4 days, and then his birthday, it would have been his birthday in 5 days. So his birthday was a day after mine. So there was always that close linked connection. And funny enough, when I was growing up, when just after he passed, the first few years, there was a time when I was really paranoid about this day, because this day and then the day before as well, because we were so our birthdays were so close, there was almost a fear that I would be taken too soon as well. So I don't really have this fear anymore. So it's just something that was part of the grieving process, I guess. But the reason, I guess, I've come on here today, and apparently I can't really talk. I think it's just there's a lot of emotions there. Is just to talk about grief and how it can derail you, but also put you back onto your path. Because that's exactly what happened to me. So obviously the shock and everything, it completely derailed me. My life just went upside down for at least 6 months. There is, and I say this to this day because of the trauma afterwards, there is a good probably 3 months that I can't remember. I just can't. And I know that is my brain protecting myself from the trauma. And I know at one point I'll be able to, when I'm ready for it, it will come up. So, but yeah, so it completely like derailed, like the trauma of that, of the loss, that really derailed me and just like really threw everything up in the air. And like I went to like counseling, and I started like really looking after myself. And I also started to look at what it is that I want my life to actually look like, and realize that I don't really want to live life the way that I was living. And I was, excuse me, I was like working in a corporate job, trying to climb the corporate ladder, and in a country that I started all over, like less than a decade before. And it's, I was just going like the logical steps. And with his death, throwing absolutely everything in the air, I was just like, no, something is like, I can't do this. I'm just like literally like running myself down. Like I wasn't in a relationship that was healthy for me, which got even worse once he passed away, which I blame myself for, but that's a story for another life. And I was just like everything was just like essentially crumbling away. Like everything was seemingly falling apart. But I knew that this falling apart was putting me on my path again. Now, what I find really interesting, like sitting here today talking to you, is that I just want to keep yawning. And that is usually a sign like that you relax and everything. So I find this really interesting because I'm not sure if I'm really relaxed during this conversation, but it's not necessarily relaxed, but it's feeling safe. So my body thinks it's safe, so which is a good thing. That's just a little side note / side quest. But yeah, so everything was like falling apart for me, and it was crumbling away. All of the stuff that just wasn't aligning anymore, like the conditioning. A lot of the conditioning fell away. The way that I had to do, I thought I had to do things, like the way that I thought my life had to look. And it's, I guess, within like this sort of time, there was like a seed deep within me planted to like build my own like business. It wasn't something that I don't know where that seed came from, but it was like placed in me. And it wasn't until, so my dad passed away in 2012, and in 2016, I believe it was, I started my yoga teacher training, which was the first step into like my running my own business. And that actually seems quite a long time now, like thinking about it, it's 4 years, but it certainly wasn't, it didn't feel that long in that time, because there was so much that needed to fall away first. So when we quite often think of like going, finding our way and finding our soul path and all of these things, we just think it just happens like this, and like things fall away and then we go on the path. But that's not necessarily what it looks like. Like for me, it was like literally 2012, 2013, like everything was like falling away. And then I'm just trying to remember when me and my ex broke up. I probably want to say 2013, maybe 2014, some of that. So, but he was like essentially like almost like the last bit that fell away from like that toxicity that I was living in. And after that, I slowly built up my life again, which felt like I'm doing this all over again, because in 2005 I moved to the UK, building my own life. I don't know what's wrong with me with the yawning. I was fine all day until now I said that. So it was like slowly like rebuilding my life yet again. And but this time, like more in a way that was aligned to me. Yes, it still didn't look like it did today, but like a lot of the things that, like the beliefs, the stories that I was telling myself that I wasn't good enough, especially, all of that fell away. All of that like literally crumbled away, and I started to like really look after myself. And after the death of my dad, that's when I sort of found Pilates and yoga and getting more like into my body to like release emotions, release trauma, to release life. That's not true. Like that's not how I mean it. But like release all of the things that just are not there for me to hold anymore. And I started to see like there is a different way. So bit by bit, I like rebuild it until I started my yoga teacher training in 2016, which is also when I then met my now husband. Yep, that was at the same time. I was just thinking, how did I just get the dates wrong? I mean, I know when I met him, but I was just contemplating, did I actually start my yoga teacher training? It doesn't really matter, but like around 2016, which is now 10 years ago, I like started the path of my own business and going down that way. And what I found is just that I found my path. I wasn't fully on it yet, but that was fine. I was on the path, and I knew that there was like one foot in, one foot out. But that's a whole different story. But I slowly built up that business, which then led into a whole lot of different things to where I am now. And I'm telling you this story because, like as I said, like the big crumbling happens, and sometimes it's not big. Sometimes it's like little things over a longer time. There is no like time in these things is no, it's not relevant. And then the actual rebuilding of the like path and or life to go onto the path didn't really happen until 2016, so quite a few years later. But it also shows that when you're going through something hard, it doesn't have to be the be all and end all. It does, your life doesn't have to end there. And that's something that I was and I still am to this point like really aware of, that I am still alive. Would I want my dad to be back? Yes, of course. Like there is no question about it. I don't have that like power, I guess, or that choice, whatever, however you want to say that. So, but what I have a power and choice over is my life, how I react, what I do, and the path that I'm on. And like with the like crumbling over the last few weeks, like a lot more has like fallen away, and like so much has become a lot clearer now, like 14 years late, like after his death. Again, between that there were like other crumblings as well, so I'm not saying it's all to do with him, but there is a life after grief. But it's also so important to actually grieve, to actually go through the motions, get the help that you may need, because I did all of that. I was grieving, I was numb, I was angry, I was whatever. Is it 8 stages? 10? Whatever the stages are, I went through them. And then I got help at some point in those stages. And I don't actually know I want to say with the last stage is acceptance, and I'm definitely there. So, but also it doesn't mean that you can't be sad later down the road. Grief is a funny thing. It comes and goes in waves. And I know I'm not alone in that. Like my husband has lost his mum to cancer. The year before we met, 2 years, maybe the year before we met. I don't actually know exactly know. So we both go through like different stages of grief at different times of the year, just depending on whether because of birthdays, the anniversaries, and all of these like important dates, I guess. And it's like nothing to be, number one, ashamed of, number two, to sweep under the rug. So actually saying in English, I don't even know. I think so. It's just something that we have to, like, I guess we as the survivors have to live with, right? And I'm not saying it's pretty, but it's, for us, it's necessary. It's also a reminder for us that we got to experience that person. Because if there's grief there, let's face it, we love them and we miss them. That's just what it is. And we got to experience the person, right? So it's, and I'm not like glamourifying grief or losing anyone, because it's not great. Like, as I said, I have no recollection after at least 3 months afterwards. But it is important just to go through the stages, get the help that you need, and then find a way for you to work with that and almost make not necessarily the best out of the situation, because there's just too much talk to make him having to make the best out of everything. But it's, see it as an opportunity to live your life the way that you want it. I mean, I always say, like, and I know it rubs a lot of people like the wrong way when I say, well, yes, it happened, but it happened for a reason. Like, do I want my dad to be here? Yes. And if I could, I would bring him back. Yes. Do we always know what the actual reason is? No. Thinking back now, I probably know what the reason is. When my husband was diagnosed with cancer, when our daughter was like 10, 12 weeks old, I wouldn't have been able to cope with that if I wouldn't have gone through this before, I think. So looking back, yeah, I know. But that's what I believe, and that's not necessarily what you believe. So you need to work out what you believe and build on that belief system. And grief is never like grief and death. There is like so much, it's associated with so much anger, because there is a lot of anger. That's what it is. But we also have to like think about ourselves. And no, we're not selfish by like prioritizing ourselves in those times. We just have to do what we need to do to survive. And usually, like quite often shortly after the pathing of the grief, that is just pure survival. Because that's what happened after my dad passed, which is why I can't remember. And that's what happened after my husband had the diagnosis. We went out into pure survival mode with a 10-week-old. And it's only like after like years. I mean, she's 4 now, so it's 4, like, yeah, no, it is 4 years ago. Just after that we found out. And we went into pure survival mode, and we're only coming out now, really. We're still working through like a lot of the like the grief stuff and like the trauma, not necessarily the grief stuff, but the trauma of that. And that's the thing, like, you have to work through that in whatever way that works for you. But I also know, like, his diagnosis, as soon as we got that, I knew what I had to do. I knew straight away I was going to build up my business again, because I didn't have at that time anymore. I was going to build up my business and just do whatever I needed to do for myself and my family. And that is what it is when you're dealing like with grief and with trauma. And there is, like with everything, or with anything really, in my belief, there is no one right answer. The only thing I would always say is get help. When you're dealing with grief and trauma, get help. Because I don't think you can necessarily deal with that alone, depending on how deep that runs. But it's for me, it definitely was a good wake-up call, both times. When I say both times, my dad passing and my husband's cancer. He is still alive. He's on, it's like bi-monthly, by twice a year checkups, just to make sure I'm not coming back for the rest of his life. So we know we're going to get the clear as such, but in both cases, it's completely rearranged my life in a way that it would not have without that. And I'm very much aware of that. And it's like something that I don't necessarily think is right, but I know these things had to happen for me to push me into, not just me, him as well, into our life path where we need to go, where we want to go, and like the life that we want to lead. And that is what it comes down to, is like, what is the life that you want to lead? And no one can answer that for you. And there's no one right answer. There's just the right answer for you. And that answer might change. That's the prerogative of life. That's the joys of it, right? But yeah, I think I'm very aware that I've been talking for 20 minutes about it. I think this is pretty much what I wanted to come on here to say today, just talking a bit about grief, like coming back to ourselves, our own path, and how it doesn't need to be the end of you as well, though it probably will be in the beginning. But thank you so much for joining me today. And I know today it was a heavy subject, but I think it's one that just doesn't get talked about enough. And because where it's just been so raw and very much at the forefront of my mind, I thought today was a good day to come on for that. So for tomorrow, I'll see what comes up, and hopefully something a bit lighter. But for the moment, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.